And we're back.
We are.
If you can't tell from the fancy headdress, it must be Halloween. Recorded.
This
today,
does not say
Halloween.
Bool, by the way. It says boo! Exclamation mark. And I apologize if that's too intense for some viewers.
Mine says, I got my eyes on you.
Yeah, he is watching.
Okay, well, I'm Brian.
I'm Kevin.
And we're the Horror Guys, where each week we review 4 or 5 horror films.
And we saw some horror films this week.
We saw some very different ones.
Some good, some bad, some,
They usually are.
Yeah.
Well, this week we're going to look at we've been talking about children's movies through most of October, doing our Halloween special a little bit differently.
We got away from that this time.
We're going back to the grown-up movies. This time we've got The She-Wolf of London from 1946.
No wolves. Spoiler.
It had a she.
Yeah.
The Shadow of the Cat from 1961.
Did have a cat.
Very hard to find Hammer film. The Japanese film Grotesque from 2009, which is on our list of most
shocking, banned, atrocious movies.
Yeah, it was all of those. And lastly, we have a brand new movie, still not even released publicly yet, called Ghost in the Graveyard, that will be out next week on all the major streaming services.
We were privileged with an early viewing of this.
Yeah. Ghost in the Graveyard.
Ghost in the Graveyard.
All right, well, first up, we go back in time to
1946, when the she-wolves were in London.
Ooh. Are we going to leave these things blank through the whole episode? That's very distracting.
Okay, let's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll turn off our blinky hats.
Yeah. I will, however, from time to time use my bony hand.
Okay. Audio listeners are like, what?
I have a bony hand.
Universal classic horror film, 1946, She-Wolf of London, directed by Gene Yarbrough, written by George Bricker and Dwight Babcock. Stars Don Porter, June Lockhart, and Sarah Hayden. 1 hour and 1 minute.
This had a most excellent, huge house set. I was really impressed with the set, even more so than usual.
It's always a big old house.
This was a big old house. Big, beautiful house. Yeah.
Well, we start out with the inspector. He has to go to the park. There was a report that a man had been attacked by a werewolf last night. It was definitely not an animal that attacked him. It wasn't a wolf man, but it was said to be a wolf woman. A she-wolf, you might say.
She-wolf.
And we cut over to these two young lovers. Barry and Phyllis are planning to be married next week. He's a lawyer, and she's Mrs. Robinson from Lost in Space. Before getting spaced out. The police are there now, investigating the site of the last night's attack, and they do find a woman's footprints. Suddenly, Phyllis gets upset and wants to ride home. She's read about the werewolf, and she thinks it's all very disturbing.
Yeah, they're on horses. I don't know if you mentioned that. Yeah.
They also find out that she doesn't like dogs very much, and they don't seem to like her much either. You like dogs?
The evidence mounts.
Yeah, the evidence mounts. Meanwhile, Phyllis's cousin Carol is sending notes to a young man of whom her mother, Aunt Martha, does not approve. He's beneath her station. It turns out that Carol and her mother aren't really related to Phyllis, and since they aren't really family, they don't have any claim to the house. This just comes up in conversation between Carol and her mother. Yeah, we talk about inheritance rights all the time in our family.
Well, yeah.
That night, Phyllis goes to bed early, and Carol tries to sneak out and see her boyfriend, but she gets caught. Meanwhile, the creepy servant hears and sees all. She's skulking around, as servants tend to do.
Yeah, this one's definitely a skulker.
There's a scream in the night, and a mysterious woman enters the house late at night. Phyllis wakes up that next morning with blood on her feet. Her slippers are covered in mud. She thinks she went out last night, but she doesn't remember it. What has she done?
No.
Could it be the Allenby curse?
She is the she-wolf.
Yes. The newspaper says a little boy was killed last night, torn apart by a wild animal less than half a mile from the house. Phyllis gets sick over it. She knows she murdered that little boy. She doesn't want to see Barry anymore. No point in making him suffer. Barry and Cousin Carol realize something is going on, but Phyllis denies that anything is wrong. She does confide in Aunt Martha, who says Phyllis is being silly and that it just can't be true. Phyllis looks in the mirror. She hears a million dogs barking outside, and then she passes out. A woman leaves the house and goes walking through the fog.
But who is it?
Hmm.
We don't get to see who it is.
The constables are all out patrolling the park, out in the fog. There's always a werewolf fog out there.
Oh, yeah.
Rounding up all
It's
the
London.
dogs they can find. Inspector... Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Inspector Latham still thinks it's a werewolf. The inspector is attacked by the strange woman in the cloak, and she bites him in the throat. He dies after telling the police it was a woman werewolf. The next morning, Phyllis and Aunt Martha find a torn dress and muddy shoes again. They hear about the dead policeman, and Phyllis knows what she's done. Finally, Barry ignores Martha and gets Phyllis to go out with him. She explains how she dreamt she took parts in pagan rites and turned into a wolf.
Well, there's more evidence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That night, the police are out again, and this time they're armed. A woman leaves the house, and this time Barry is waiting outside and follows her. He sees that it's Carol. They get separated in the fog. Barry is questioned by the police, and at the same time, another man is attacked not far away. Carol shows up, and the man who is attacked turns out to be Dwight, her boyfriend.
Coincidence?
Martha tells Carol that Barry will never marry Phyllis because she's insane. Phyllis tells Carol her entire story, and Carol wants to go to the police because she thinks some kind of terrible scam is being perpetrated. Could be.
It could be. Yeah.
Aunt Martha brings Phyllis more and at this point it's starting to look like, yeah, there's something going on.
Yeah, there is.
Aunt Martha brings Phyllis more warm milk and wonders if Phyllis will be put into the asylum that very night when the police come for her.
Warm milk every night.
Phyllis fogs out and becomes paralyzed. Martha explains that she's going to kill Phyllis before the police arrive.
Spoilers.
They would find that she was perfectly sane. The maid, Hannah, listens to all this from outside the door. She admits killing the boy and the inspector in the park, and she pulls out a big knife.
The aunt, not the maid.
Huh?
The aunt, not the maid.
Oh.
You kind of ran that together and made it sound like, yeah.
Martha
Yes.
admits killing the boy and the inspector in the park. She pulls out a big knife.
Yeah.
Martha hears Hannah and confronts her. She chases her down the steps and falls on the knife. Barry and the police come in and rescue Phyllis. There was no real werewolf at all. It was all just a plot.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it was okay.
No monsters.
Not really.
It's sort of horror because they say there's a werewolf. You don't always have to see the
and there
monster.
were murders and monstrous murders and
vaguely horror-ish.
Yeah.
You did like it.
Overall, yeah.
Okay, yeah. It was good. It was good.
It was all right.
The werewolf wears a long coat and scarf and doesn't look anything like a werewolf. Of course, by the end, we find out there really isn't a werewolf at all, but it's mostly filmed as if there is one, so at least it's suspenseful and interesting. It turns out that it's not really a monster movie at all, but more of a murder mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the trick is I'm not sure what Martha's endgame would have been. Was the plan for Phyllis to go to prison for murder, or Phyllis being committed? But she even says herself at the end that Phyllis be proven sane by the police.
Well, if she gets committed, though.
But she wouldn't be committed. She just said the police would end up, throwing her story out.
Oh, yeah, but she would go crazy. She was starting to go crazy, and I think that was the objective until she decided to kill her. But when she realized that.
But right before she decides to kill her, though, she says, even the police would find you eventually sane. So this plan would not have worked no matter what.
But in the meantime, they get to live there.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's all okay. It was still pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Black and white?
Well,
it was black and white, wasn't it?
And she wouldn't marry Barry.
That's true, too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Her marrying Barry was...
Marion Barry? Yeah.
Her getting married to Barry was the cause of all this.
Yeah.
Because then they'd move to his house and she'd sell the big house.
And then she'd sell the big house and then they'd be out on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that takes us up to...
Shadow of the Cat.
Shadow of the Cat, 1961. Also black and white.
And we watched a copy that was VHS taped off of television, and then they took the VHS copy and stored that for 20 years, and then ripped that to a computer file, and then downloaded.
Then they stepped on
and
it a
then
few times.
Downloaded that to a DVD that they left out in the sun too long.
The only DVD I could find for this movie was British Region 2 that would have had to take 6 weeks to get here by carrier pigeon, probably. I don't know if it was never released on DVD in America or what. You can get this movie for free on archive.org. That's where I ended up getting it. It's really crappy quality.
Boy,
but it's viewable. It's watchable.
Viewable.
Not one of the more popular Hammer films.
Yeah, apparently not.
But we're trying to do them in order, and this is the next one after the last
And we
one.
got to collect them all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Directed by John Gilling, written by George Baxt, stars Andre Morell, who was in something we watched not too long ago. Barbara Shelley and William Lucas.
You're just going to leave it at that. Yeah, we're real experts. We're professionals. We know all our actors.
1 hour, 19 minutes. And, okay. Did you like it?
Not very much. And I'm not just saying that because of the stinky copy. There's a reason that I think it never got remastered and never really... It was pretty mediocre.
It's pretty lame. It's sort of like a murdering fairy tale.
Kind of.
Not realistic in any way.
No.
I mean, even if what happened actually happened, the way that people behave is just not normal.
Yeah.
Well, there's an old woman, Ella, who's reading Poe's The Raven aloud to her cat. We see footsteps as a man enters the house downstairs. He enters the room, and she says, "I'm done, Walter." And then the man beats her to death while her cat watches. Actually, there are 2 men and a woman involved here, and all 3 of them work together to dispose of the body. And then the credits roll. So that's like the first minute. So we watch as the 2 men bury the body, and the cat watches as well. 2 days later, the police question Walter, Ella's husband, who was one of the killers.
Where'd your wife go? I don't know. I don't know.
Ella has disappeared, but no one knows why. Walter's very worried as Ella was under a doctor's care, and he points out to the inspector that Tabitha the cat isn't eating properly. The butler, Andrew, and maid, Clara, try to console Walter. The cat won't go near any of them. She knows, Walter points out. Walter chases Tabitha into the cellar, where he tries to kill her, but he panics when he sees rats and has an apparent heart attack. They're big rats.
Yeah, and he scares easily.
Ella's niece, Beth.
The note that I have is the husband is an excitable dork who has a heart attack in the basement.
Yeah. Ella's niece, Beth, comes to visit and take care of Walter. When she arrives, she finds Andrew with a big scar on his face. The cat attacked while he was napping. Walter explains that Ella has cut Beth out of her will, but that he'll take care of it as soon as he's well. Tabitha comes in and likes Beth, but when Clara comes in, the cat freaks out and hides. The police inspector comes around, and he inspects foul play in the disappearance of Ella, and then Walter pulls out Ella's new will and shows it to the inspector. Ella's disappeared. Here's the will.
Yeah, coincidentally.
Yeah, that's not suspicious.
Yeah.
Walter is just completely obsessed with the cat now, and the outsiders are starting to think he may be losing his mind.
Yeah, they get really obsessed with the cat. Yeah. Guilt. 3
more relatives, Edgar, Jacob, and Louise, arrive. These 3 are already conspiring to weasel some money out of Walter. They're pigs, hoping that Aunt Ella is dead and trash-talking Beth already.
And Beth is just super sweet. Just comes across as genuinely nice.
She's the only good person we've seen so far.
Yeah, but she really comes across as genuine.
Yeah.
I like her.
Clara throws a knife at Beth, thinking she was the cat. Clara is hysterical, and Beth cannot fathom why everyone is so concerned about that stupid cat. Walter knows why the 3 new arrivals are here, and he doesn't care. They start making plans while the cat watches through the skylight. He needs them to find Ella's original will so he can destroy it, and they also need to kill Tabitha the cat. Beth tells Michael, her fiancé, everything. He thinks they're afraid of the cat because the cat knows what happened to Ella. His guesses are exactly right and just what we've seen happen. And this is like maybe halfway into the movie. And the one guy's already got it all figured out.
Yeah, he's a smart feller.
Doesn't solve anything. They all chase after the cat, and Andrew the butler gets sucked into some quicksand while the cat watches. Oops, quicksand, that's never good.
Movie trope.
Yeah. Next, the cat jumps on Clara, knocking her down the steps to her death. Walter is now the only one left who really knows what happened.
And his days are numbered.
Seems that way.
Because the cat is still in the house.
The cat is back. Beth and Michael find evidence that someone has been searching for something in the attic. The three cousins start getting the idea that Walter is the weak link in the scheme. Jacob leaves Walter's window open, and Tabitha the cat crawls in during the night. Walter sees the cat on his bed and dies of fright. That was easy.
Yeah.
When the inspector shows up, Edgar jumps right in there with a will showing that Walter left him everything. What? Walter's dead? Look, I've got a will! This is the way it's like a winning lottery ticket.
Yeah, it is.
Louise knows what Jacob did, and she's getting nervous too. She wants out. Jacob tells Edgar that something needs to be done about Beth, and soon. Michael figures everything out again and tells Beth and the inspector all of it, but there's still no real evidence. Jacob hears the cat upstairs and follows her out onto the roof. Of course, he falls to his death. Meanwhile, upstairs, Edgar finds the original will, but also stops to hunt the cat. The rotten old attic collapses on top of him, and he's dead too. The inspector finds the will, leaving everything to Beth, so that gets resolved easily. Then Tabitha shows up, and everyone follows her out to the woods to Ella's secret grave. Beth decides to move away and sells the house, and the cat moves in with the new occupants. The end.
I never want to see this house again, says Beth.
But she didn't take the cat with her.
No.
Yeah, so you're not quite enthusiastic about this one.
Not as much, no. Mm-mm.
This was black and white, and the only DVD I could find was Region 2, so we ended up watching a really grainy version of this from archive.org, and it was clearly a VHS recording off someone's television. It even came up with a little logo at one point.
Oh, yeah,
channel
the station identification in the corner, yeah.
From the beginning, the three murderers were obsessed with tracking the cat. Why? Yes, the cat knew everything, but who's the cat gonna tell?
Cats don't talk much.
Yeah, until people started dying, their terror was really silly and overacted.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, the deaths of Edgar and Jacob were pretty contrived and unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to get up on top of a castle to chase a cat?
He was bonkers by that point.
Or stomp around
the guilt and rage had driven him to this
I think that's
culmination
it. These people are all so guilty, they're eaten up and act stupid.
Yeah.
Still, the movie had a cat for the hero, so it's got that going for it.
Yeah.
If you can actually find a good copy of the film somewhere, I would sort of recommend it, as it's simply one of the Forgotten Hammer films, and you need to see it for the collection.
Mm-hmm. Collect them all.
Not great, but it's all right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You see anything grotesque lately?
Yes, it was very grotesque. It was called Grotesque. Made in 2009, a Japanese movie.
Yeah. Well, we said last week that we'd had all these sickeningly sweet children's movies lately. So in November, we're going to be focusing on some of the nastiest, most banned, disgusting, the raunchiest, nastiest stuff we can find. At least one film a week.
This movie was banned in Norway. They had a hard time getting it. Well, it's technically illegal in Britain because the British Board of Film Classification said the film featured sexual sadism for its own sake. It
did?
Yeah. Also stated that giving the film a rating would involve a risk of harm to those viewing it. So they wouldn't rate it so there's no classification.
The censors didn't want to watch it because they were afraid of it?
Well, the censors watched it.
Risks harm to those who are reviewing it.
But they said nobody else should. So anyway.
That may be a little exaggeration there.
We in the United States can watch it freely. Because,
Okay, so directed by Koji Shiraishi, written by him also, stars Kotoya Hiroyama, Hiroaki Kawatsuri, and Shigeo Osako. 3 people. 1 hour, 13 minutes. Link in the show notes. This one you can actually buy from Amazon with our affiliate links.
Unrated. Unrated version, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of got to be the unrated. If they were to cut out all the bad stuff in this, would you have like 8 minutes?
It'd be like, a couple smiling at each other. And
they're walking down the street at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I remember there was it's a joke on the DVD, one of the DVD releases of Cabin in the Woods. There's the G-rated version, the G-rated cut. Mm-hmm. And it's like a shot of the sun and a shot of some clouds and some trees, and they're driving down the road and a couple smiles at each other. The end.
Cabin in the Woods wasn't that bad. This kind of deserves
not
what it
Cabin in
gets.
the Woods. Okay, it was a Cabin in the Woods. The disease that was killing them all. The Eli Roth movie. Eli Roth directed, wrote. Oh, I want to call it Cabin in the Woods, and it's not. That's
Cabin Fever.
Cabin Fever. Yeah. The G-rated version. Anyway.
Yeah. I need to remember what Ender
It's
Morrell
like
was in just to
it's like
finish
30,
up the episode.
30 seconds long, and yeah.
Okay,
Anyway.
so this one starts out. A couple is walking along, and it's subtitled. It's Japanese.
Yes.
Couple is walking alone, and a man gets out of a van behind them and hits them over the head. 20 seconds in, they've been kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
The girl, Aki, wakes up tied to a vertical table with a ball gag in her mouth. The man is in a similar predicament a few feet in front of her.
I notice how much story you've got on this.
There was a story.
Well, sort of. Barely a story. A couple gets kidnapped and tortured. The end. It really didn't. Yeah.
Trigger warning.
Yeah. Trigger warning. Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, blood, gore, rape. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sexual violence. Yeah.
It's got all the bad stuff.
Yeah. Grotesque. It was grotesque. Yeah.
Okay, so he asked the man, do you want to go first or second? And the man's name is Kazuo. The torturer stabs the man repeatedly with an ice pick. Kazuo passes out, and the man uses smelling salts to wake him back up and stab him again. He asks the girl, would you die to save him? And then we get a flashback, and it turns out they were on their very first date when all this happened.
So she says no.
So neither of them is willing to die for the other because, it's first date.
Yeah. Don't know that.
He asks if they've ever had sex, and they both answer no.
Well, he takes care of that for him.
He's very methodical and controlled about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
He seems very clinical about the entire process. He starts kissing and licking the girl, not so much because he enjoys it, but more to aggravate Kazuo. Then he masturbates each of them in front of each other, which is shown uncut and in complete detail.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, he says the real pain will start now, and chloroforms them both. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that scene went on a long time, actually.
Yeah, it did.
They both wake up on flat tables, and the man is wearing surgical garb. He starts up a chainsaw and removes Kazuo's fingers. He picks them up off the floor one by one. Then he puts some kind of paste on the wound and uses stretch film to hold it all together.
You know, it was a nice romantic gesture of him to make a little necklace of them to give to her, though.
I want a necklace of the fingers,
Yeah.
He makes a necklace out of the fingers for Aki. Then he does the same with her fingers. She screams while he's doing this, so in punishment, he cuts her nipples off as well.
Snipples.
That was a painful-looking scene.
Mm-hmm. A lot of painful-looking stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
pain.
more than others, yeah.
Then he takes off her entire right arm, for good measure. Then he says, I'm going to torture you now.
Yeah, there's horror movies that have torture porn elements to them, like Saw and Hostel. This just seemed like torture porn for the sake of torture porn.
There's nothing in this movie but the torture.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm telling what happens, but basically it's just one excuse for torture gore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start on her. Oh, I'm going to torture you now. If you give in, I'll start on her. Agreed, he asks. Kazuo agrees. I'll start by driving these foot-long nails into your testicles. Is that okay? Kazuo does not surrender.
He doesn't think it's okay. No.
After the testicles, the eye and the penis are next.
Yes, you heard that right.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Some time passes, and we see that they've all been cleaned up, patched up, and alive in hospital beds.
And you think at that point that they're in a real hospital? They're not.
I never thought that.
Oh, I did initially. I thought they were.
I had this in bag.
There was a very brief moment. Yeah.
Then in walks the torturer.
Yeah.
They haven't been rescued. He's simply giving them time to heal and recover a bit.
Because they gave him so much excitement that he's going to fix them up and let them go.
Yeah. They're still chained to their beds. He explains that he plans to release them and turn himself in as soon as he's done with them. He adds that he's very rich and will give them all his assets when he turns himself in. Eventually, Aki and Kazuo start to believe this. After what looks like weeks pass, the doctor says it's almost time, and the two get hopeful.
Yeah, they're getting pretty healed up.
He reminds them to take their medication, and they pass out.
Mm-hmm.
They wake up back in the torture room.
Surprise!
I haven't broken my promise. I just need a little more from you. First, here it gets creative. He's going to pull out Kazuo's intestines and tie them to the table. Kazuo can then cut
just one end of his intestines
cut it off down at the base, tie it to the table.
Yeah.
And then he can cut through his own intestines with a pair of scissors and release Aki if he wants.
Because his intestines aren't long enough to reach her. If he, so
she's like 20 feet away and he's got 18 feet of intestines. I don't know, do the math, look it up.
Yeah, or whatever. However many feet it was. Yeah.
He'll die, but at least she'll go free. The doctor does just exactly this and releases Kazuo, but he's tied to the table by his own intestines. Kazuo crawls across the floor and reaches the scissors, and using only his thumb, since he's got no fingers left.
Which is an impressive use of scissors. To cut stuff with your thumbs.
He cuts through his own intestines with his thumbs and scissors, and then he gets a little further and cuts Aki's legs apart. He tries to climb up to cut the tie binding her one remaining hand, and he cuts at the rope and finds out that there's a metal cable under there after all. This is all just a trick.
No, the doctor says. You can cut through it. Just keep trying.
And he collapses without releasing her.
Mm-hmm.
Aki then goes on this whole monologue about how the doctor smells like a skunk, and it's his whore mother that made him that way. She goes into great detail and hits him with some actual personal pity. He then finally shows some emotion as he runs her through with a chainsaw and cuts her head off with an axe. Shroomp! And he swings so hard that her head flies through the air and bites him in the neck, nearly killing him too. Kazuo wakes up on the ground to see Aki's head lying next to him. She spits out a chunk of meat and dies.
Mm-hmm.
We then see the killer place scissors on the couple's grave. He didn't die. He walks down a long row of identical grave markers of what are almost certainly his previous victims. We see him later in his van, stalking another victim, but this time he uses deodorant. He learned. Did you like it?
Well, not really. I mean, no.
There's a lot of cringeworthiness in this one.
Yeah, cringeworthy, but, I mean, I don't mind the torture porn element.
Are you just saying movies? You don't like it because you don't want people to think you're like...
No, because there wasn't
torture pervert?
Because there wasn't really a story.
He kidnapped
them. He
tortured them.
I like my torture porn to have a bit of a story with it. I didn't feel like this had enough of a story.
All right.
Yeah. It felt like it was that for its own sake, and
that sounds like what the ratings boards all said too.
Well, yeah. I think they were in agreement.
Yeah, somebody liked the torture and the gore better than the story in this one.
Mm-hmm.
If you're into gore, this film cannot be beat. It's pure, unapologetic rape and torture porn, and seems to have no real story other than an excuse to watch these two innocent people get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Still, it's well written, and the gore is really kind of perfect.
Oh, it's realistic. Yeah.
It'll make you uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you like gore, you're probably going to see this.
Yeah, it's very realistic.
If you don't, then you probably want to avoid this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all for this week?
No, we saw Ghost in the Graveyard.
We saw a new movie, Ghost in the Graveyard.
Brand spanking new.
Brand new, yes.
Yeah.
Directed by Charlie Camparetto, written by him also. Stars Kelly Berglund, Jake Busey, and Olivia Larson. Hour and 33 minutes.
Did you
like it?
I asked you first.
I mostly liked it. It had some weaknesses.
I liked it more than disliked it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was watchable and entertaining, and it had some weaknesses, like you say. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, before we get started, this one's not out yet, but it will be released by Dark Coast Video on November 5th. So not immediately when this one shows up online, but chances are a couple days later it'll be good.
So go easy on the spoilers with this one.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, it was refreshing seeing Jake Busey play a character who wasn't evil or crazy or both, because he so often does that.
Always.
And in this, he's a normal, nice guy. Yeah. Well, I don't know about normal, but a nice guy.
So this one will be on Amazon, Hoopla, Vimeo On Demand, and Fandango.
Mm-hmm.
And we start out with a group of little kids gathering together in the cemetery to play a game called Ghost in the Graveyard. Have you ever heard of this game before?
I haven't.
It's some kind of variation on hide and seek plus tag, and Sally plays it a little too well, making everyone stay until after dark. Little Martha, one of the kids, falls into a grave in the dark, and is killed.
Yeah, it's all fun till someone falls into an open grave and dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We move ahead 10 years, and all the little kids are now seniors in high school. Sally has come home from somewhere, and she's been gone a long while. A different group of kids want to take a shortcut through the graveyard, but legend says the little girl's ghost still haunts the place.
10 years later.
One kid is brave enough to proceed, and he does see a girl get up off the ground near a headstone. He freaks out and crashes his bike, and then he's beaten to death.
By who or what? A vengeful ghost.
They go to a Catholic school, and one of their classes is talking about the Book of Revelation. The teacher wants Sally to read a long passage. After class, Zoe and her friends welcome her back, and she reiterates that she was not in the psych ward. But she doesn't want to talk about it. Some of her friends are going up to the woods after school.
Yeah, these are a group of the popular girls that
Yeah.
are all cliquey and
Yeah.
yeah.
And Sally is invited. Zoe and Salad are both interested in the same guy named Reed. The police are investigating the murdered boy. Someone with bare feet dragged the boy's body into a mausoleum and desecrated it. It's some kind of satanic ritual.
And would ghosts do that?
Sally visits Martha's grave, and the police see her there. A child's arm comes out from beneath Sally's bed and gives her a box. Inside the box is her birth certificate, and there's something on there that she doesn't like or didn't know. All the other kids at school have heard that the boy's murder happened right after Sally came home, and they put two and two together and assume that she was involved.
So, is she the murderer?
One incident after
ghost?
another leads us to realize that she sees this little girl and no one else does. Is it real or is she wacko?
And is the nun, the teacher, in on it? Is she evil? Is she good? Is she...
The nun. She's kind of a scary nun.
She is kind of a scary...
Not as bad as the nun.
Yeah, no, she's not the nun, but yeah, she's a little...
All nuns are kind of scary. They're kind of like... Yeah, nuns and clowns are kind of like used to be respectable and not so much anymore.
Movies have ruined them, yeah.
About this time, a letter arrives from the Sisters of the Seven Demons, and the letter asks if all preparations have been made for her return. The sheriff is acting funny, and so is her father, who in his spare time reads books on human sacrifice. People get more and more creepy toward Sally, especially Zoe's mother. There are clearly some big secrets in this little town.
Yeah.
And that's about 30-ish minutes in, so
Yeah.
there's more coming.
Yeah, and the secrets build on the secrets, and then you kind of think you might know what's going on, and then you don't. And yeah.
I think my commentary is longer than my summary.
That's all right.
30 minutes in, and it becomes clear that this is it real or is she imagining all this kind of story?
There is a lot of that element, yeah.
Except that nearly everyone else really does appear to be involved in a conspiracy, so we know there's more going on than just Sally being crazy.
Something is happening.
How much did they have to pay Jake Busey to play a normal, sensible guy? Does he charge more or less for that? The acting here was all just fine, although we didn't realize Busey was playing her father until nearly the end of the movie.
Yeah, that was weird. It felt kind of unclear, and her brother is there too, and there's a baby.
And they all look about the same age, except for the baby.
Well, yeah.
We assumed she was being raised by her two older brothers, because the ages of the actors don't really mesh very well.
Well, and their relationship seemed kind of vaguely undefined.
It turns out he's the father, and the other older guy is her older brother, and then there's her. And it's a father and two kids.
Yeah.
And some strange baby.
Yeah.
But it did feel like a father and two kids.
It was kind of slow for me to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whose baby was that on the second floor that made a couple of appearances? Again, the relationships between characters are not clearly defined.
And I wondered why they bothered having the baby.
Was this Sally's baby? The father's? The brother's? Someone else's? Whose baby was this? It never was explained. There's a baby living in the house with these three people.
I think it was probably the brothers.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's not really that important.
It didn't. It was okay.
Why is this baby even here?
Very minor point in the movie, and
children in peril.
Yeah.
The filmmakers tried to keep everything mysterious up to the end. Unfortunately, the various loose ends and mysteries from the first half really didn't tie in much with the ending.
Yeah, they did.
It
all did. It all tied up.
No, it didn't.
It was weird.
I can't say any more of this without spoilers.
No, don't spoil, but
no, it didn't make all sense.
It did. Good.
This was based on a book series, and I have no idea how close this is to the book, but the film is way too disjointed to really make a lot of sense as a one-part standalone film. I have too many questions, and the film didn't wrap up all the right ones.
Oh, it didn't wrap up.
The last
No,
few minutes
no.
set this up for a sequel,
Mhm.
but I really kind of doubt we'll see more of this one. Ghost in the Graveyard 2.
The Nun's Revenge.
Okay, well. And again, Dark Coast will release the
all-
film on November 5th on all the usual streaming networks.
And all in all, I would recommend it. I was more entertained than not. I give it
yeah,
not a super
it was entertaining.
not a super strong thumbs up, but I give it a thumbs up.
I just
And,
don't think
you
they
know,
explain enough.
they could have explained more.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I thought the stuff all pretty much tied up and explain. Oh, that's why that happened, and oh, that's why that happened. You know, there was a lot of that. For
Maybe
me.
it needs a second viewing.
Yeah. Anyway.
And that's our show.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Stop in during the week at horrorguys.com for news and horror updates. Comment on this podcast or contact us. Now, one more thing. We always mention that we have this Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Patreon.com/horrorguys. And we now have bonus episodes on Patreon. We have one where we talk about everything Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing the movie from the early 80s. The Return of Swamp Thing from the late 80s. The 1990 TV series of Swamp Thing. And the 2019 Swamp Thing that we saw the entirety of.
All the Swamp
one episode.
Things.
Another bonus episode that you can only get through Patreon, a Patreon exclusive, is our Mummy's Day episode, where we talk about the hand of the mummy, the tomb of the mummy, the ghost of the mummy, and the mummy's curse of the mummy. Lon Chaney as the mummy. And we liked some of those we didn't. So we got lots of mummies, lots of Swamp Things.
Mm-hmm.
Patreon.com/horrorguys. Give something and you get the extra videos. I think with the high end there, you also get a copy of our Tales to Shivers book. Tales to Make You Shiver book, which I should have brought down a paperback copy of that to show. You've seen it before if you've been watching all the shows. But next week on this show, we will have some other things.
What? Tell us.
The Secret of the Blue Room from 1933. We're going back in time for some even earlier Universals. Night Creatures, also known as Captain Clegg from 1962. Captain Clegg. Sounds very piratey.
It does.
Thirst/Bakjwi. I don't know how to say it. It's Korean. Thirst from 2009 is a Korean vampire film.
Mm-hmm.
And to go on with our Ultra Runch November, we have a Serbian film from 2010.
Which is, something.
Yeah, I've seen that one before.
Mm-hmm.
I would have said Grotesque was one of the most disgusting movies I've ever seen. Well, I guess it is one
Serbian film has more of a story.
Serbian film is well above that.
Yeah,
it's
characters and story and stuff.
Oh boy, we're gonna have to watch something back in kind of Little House on the Prairie in December to clean things up,
to cleanse our palate.
Yeah, check us out at horrorguys.com. I'm Brian.
I'm Kevin,
and we'll see you next week.
Bye.